Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. Today and tomorrow, folks, that's all you got left of Games and Things spring clearance sale. Just 2 days. Everything in their 10,000 square foot showroom is on sale. Some things up to 50% off. Floor models, discontinued items, new arrivals, even custom orders, all on sale today and tomorrow. Get to Games and Things, the corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road. Been there for 40 years. OurGameRoom.com if you need directions. But Games and Things is where you need to get for their spring clearance sale today and tomorrow only. All right, a couple of quick questions in this segment, just some house cleaning. Thoughts on kicking and punting. There were no returns, so we're not going to talk about that. But anything stand out to you in terms of the kickers and punters? And I'll throw one out. Watching the kicks, both kickers seem to be kicking low extra points. The extra points weren't exactly towering through the, it made me wonder what kind of legs they have in terms of strength, because it was kind of a line drive on the extra points. That stood out to me. Did anybody else notice that?
Yeah. Punting stood out to me.
Punting?
And it wasn't good. I mean, you're punting against air, and you just didn't look good. Your hang times didn't look good. Your distance didn't look good. And with an offense like this that could possibly put your defense on the field more, that's going to be an important thing is, okay, do we get that extra 5 to 10 or 12 yards from our punter? And boy, yesterday I just was not very pleased with the punting. I agree with you on the kicking too. It looked too line drive-ish on the extra points. But the punting is what stood out to me, and not in a good way.
Are we picking too many nits here, or do you guys agree on the kicking and punting?
I think some of that was they did have a backup punter in there at times, and there's no competition for Paxton Brooks, honestly, right now. I think he's the guy that will give you some booming 55-yarders of high hang time, but then you might get some short ones at the same time. And then in terms of the extra points, I think you're absolutely right. Toby Wilson handled them. Remember when Brent Samaglia was hurting and shut it down, he handled the PATs at the end of the season. But I would expect Chase McGrath to win that job with more experience. But we don't really get to see much in terms of long field goal attempts or anything like that. And I wish they would at least tried to put out the guys that might return some punts that would actually be threats instead of Theo Jackson back there, even though they weren't actually returning.
Yeah, they weren't returning, just fielding. Yeah. Jimmy, any thoughts on special teams, what you saw yesterday?
I didn't think they showed enough to really get much of a gauge on it. It's kind of interesting that your punters struggle against air without a rush.
Yeah.
I saw Brooks boom one. And another decent punt, but I didn't see the consistency out of that you would want.
All right, the second part of this segment, very quick here, and I'm looking for guys who have the potential to make an impact this fall. So next segment, I want to talk about just how many walk-ons you saw out there and what does that tell us. And so some of those guys that popped, and there were a lot in the David Yancey category. The guy's always going to be remembered. He's like a legend for his spring game performances at Tennessee. But we'll talk about those guys next. So here I want to talk about guys that we haven't mentioned yet that popped, like Warren Burrell with the pick six we haven't mentioned yet yesterday. Anybody else to you that caught your eye that you said, okay, this guy showed me something, he popped yesterday?
I'll go with Javonte Spraggins. There was one on a goal line run touchdown that he pulled from a right guard position with the first team unit, by the way, and just destroyed. I think it was Dominic Bailey. And I thought he blocked well throughout. I think he's had a good spring. He's violent. Coaches talk about him. I think he's got a chance to be in that starting five when they get out there.
Jalen McCullough, I thought he delivered a couple of really nice blows in the secondary. The secondary has not been known as a great tackling secondary or a physical secondary, and I thought he made a couple of nice hits on receivers, which I think is important in a secondary. I know Willie Martinez, the secondary coach, said, I don't want guys who can just cover. They got to be able to tackle too. I thought McCullough delivered a couple of nice blows.
Anybody else stand out?
I was going to go with McCullough too. Little bit different reason. I thought he was the only one in the secondary that looked like he was actually delivering tackles and hitting, doing something like that. That was a very unimpressive bunch to me. But so I was going to go with McCullough as well.
Can I say Princeton fan, even though David mentioned him earlier? I thought he did a nice job. I do think Tennessee is going to incorporate the tight end more into this offense. Miles Campbell had a couple of decent plays, the freshman tight end. I think he could find his way into the rotation.
All right, I tell you what, when we come back, let's talk about the Jack Jancics and the Hunter Salmons and the fact that you had a lot of walk-ons out there early. Now, spring games are filled with walk-ons, we know it. There were a lot of them out there in the first quarter of yesterday's game. What message does that send us, if any? Come on back on the Sports Source, we'll discuss.